Hello, this is Spiritual Perspectives, Discerning News. I'm Tom Shantz, and this is Tiger Coll. Today, we're going to talk about what the theme of the month is in some of our subscription materials for June of 2026. And, the purpose of this is to talk about what's happening in the outer environment, but also related to, you might say, my inner environment and some of the materials and ways that we can share with people to go forward to help all of us find our own answers.
Yeah.
And is there anything you'd like to say about that, Tiger?
Just that there is so much opportunity in the environment, the people I meet. There's more there's more to handle than I'm capable of working with.
Interesting.
And so it's kind of like the sun. How much the rays of the sun can I handle, right? Because the sun is just shining, assuming it's a sunny day, right?
Uh-huh.
There's so much there that I can overindulge, right? I can't capture all of it. It's so much. So what I'm trying to say is that we'll be talking about that theme of the month is leadership, right?
Leadership, yes.
And we start with inner leadership. So I need to know where I begin and end. I need to know what my interest is. I need to know what my direction is, and then I can start harnessing all of the opportunities and potential that's out there.
Yeah, back earlier in the green room, you said something that I wrote down as little quotes is, as I live my life, I really can't control the tide as it's moving in and out and what's going on, outside of me. And so one of the solutions that's occurred to me during this week, and we're going to tie this into, what's happening in the news as well, is, if I work from the perspective of asking spirit or my guidance, to create outcomes for me, magnetize this outcome for me, rather than, magnetize, help me move through what's going on. In other words, as the tide's coming in, how can I best work with that? And, I think a lot of us in our first 7 years, we're taught, and it's reinforced through our society, that, I've got to control things to get the outcomes, to manipulate, that either the success I want or the relationships I want and that kind of thing. So it's a whole different perspective when I start working from my true feelings and my inner leadership, which already has some answers naturally. In other words, I had to learn how to react to certain situations based on fear rather than respond to the situation.
Right.
And I guess another big theme for all that is what's helped me clarify that as I've, regrouped this month is, what's my business and what isn't my business. And even though I can perceive a lot, I'm a smart guy, I'm spiritually aware, I'm sensitive, it's important that I just really discern and feel and recheck with my guidance. Well, is that even my business to be involved with? Just because I can control it, and like I say, I said this one of the recent episodes. I had that insight, like, some of these alternative ways, or the maze way, or the confused way that I've worked with things. In other words, it's all based on fear or pressure.
Right.
So the suffering, it has worked. I mean, I have gained some outcomes that I was looking for, but not necessarily the outcome I needed in the bigger picture, which is another perspective. So,
expanding on that, because we did talk about that prior to coming on to the podcast here. So that control is important. Like I need to be in charge of my energy, in charge of my thoughts, in charge of my actions. If I'm not in charge of my energy, if I'm not in charge of my thoughts, if I'm not in charge of my actions, something or someone else is going to be. That is the nature of this place and the law of gravity. So I do need to have some degree of, I guess you could say, control over my own thoughts. I need to be able to wield the energy that I have. And for instance, you were bringing up when we were getting started that there's just different levels of consciousness, and people go through, they make the grade, it's kind of like young people going, okay, I'm going to go to first grade, then I'm going to go to second grade, then I'm going to make the grade to third, and then I'm going to make the grade to fourth, and so forth. So that's true also for people's spiritual life. And so there's different layers and different levels and things that people will get involved in, and different concepts, control being one of them. And that's important. They need to experience that and try that so that they know where they begin and end. Because it is true. I mean, if you're in the jungle, as an example, I know there's an extreme example, you need to control some of that environment. I mean, the snakes and the spiders will come and bite you, and all kinds of things. It's just not a small matter. So you need to burn back some of that jungle and put some barriers and create a situation where you're in command or in charge, or you could say in control of that immediate environment. But the game is that if I'm operating on fear, then I'm going to try to control the entire jungle rather than my space and what I need to be doing. And that is where the different layers of consciousness is. There's a certain layer where control starts helping me, but it can go too much. I start to impose my energy on more than just my immediate environment, more than just myself and maybe my unit, the people close to me. All of a sudden, it starts becoming control for people around me, my workplace, trying to control society,
right,
etc. So control isn't bad. It's just how we use it and what level of consciousness I'm working from. If I realize that control ultimately is about me being in charge of my energy, my thoughts, and my direction. That's the big thing. You had someone that asked us to put some focus on some different things. That's the beginning of it. I am in charge of my direction and my energy. And there is no one else that came here to do that. No one.
So one of our listeners asked us, someone in Australia, how to dream big without having delusions of grandeur. He'd like to hear us speak a bit about that. And also another quote by Thoreau that resonates with him, that most men lead lives of quiet desperation, and they'd like to hear our thoughts on that. So I always find it fascinating that often when we ask different questions or we have different examples of what we've been going through during the week and little snippets of wisdom that occur to us and phrases that our guides give us, that it's easy to say, oh, that's different than, get over intellectual about it. Like, oh, well, that's not exactly what we're talking about or this. And people argue. I found that if I listen to what my colleagues and people around me who are contributing go through, or what their questions are, often it's really real. We can find some common ground there. It's really related. So one of the things I wanted to share about was that it's funny that we got asked this question this week, because the insights I've been getting a bit from my guidance is that, in some ways, now our theme of the month in our subscriptions is leadership for this month of June 2026. And in the Way Showers philosophy, there's a paragraph on life force, which is expressing leadership is expressing life force. And some of the lines here are that I need to distinguish between being greedy and being loyal to myself. The word selfish can unfortunately stimulate guilt, rejection, or even confrontation. But the dirty little secret is, if I don't have a strong sense of self, I'm operating on nothing, wholly without life force energy. I've often heard said that the ultimate is selflessness. This is a material or physical way to look at things, and there is some truth to it, just not all the truth. The bigger picture and the spiritual perspective is the more I truly love myself, the more that love will expand to encompass people, the world, and the universe. It is my life force expressed. Spirit loves working with such kind of souls. It is the manifestation of leadership, regardless of whether I'm leading or following. So here it is. I am a soul with a purpose and plan. Does that not say it all? I don't have leadership. I am leadership. And what struck me about that and how I related to it is that's right. It struck me that what's the balance between me being greedy and wanting all the opportunity or control the opportunity, and the control's always based on some fear I might lose it or I won't get it, versus selflessness, which is, a balance. So it's, to me, it's like the balance between my intellectual ideas and, the concepts that I have, the feeling. So the solution for me is just working with my guidance more and more to ask that question, rather than try to control outcomes, ask what's in my best interest, or get a feeling, just tune into my true feelings, because the wisdom is already there to live more in balance.
Yeah. I mean, this may sound unspiritual, but we operate here on interest.
On planet Earth.
On planet Earth.
Yeah.
And spiritually, the equivalent of that would be the word desire. Not in the sinful manner of desire, what people have been described as it, but the soul moves by desire. Mm-hmm. If I truly desire something as a soul, as a spirit, I've already halfway there, right? I project my energy there. So I'm connected to what I desire. So the going back to full circle about some of the questions that came in. First of all, if there's something in my heart that is guiding me, if there's something big, something I need to move toward, that is my direction. That is a part of what I need to be a part of, one way or another. And all the thoughts and all the fears and all of the naysayers and all of the limitations, those are there to be dealt with as I'm moving toward my goal. If I try to deal with the naysayers, the fears, and the limitations, when I'm not moving toward my goals, I am not functioning as I intended to function. I'm intended to function. I am working off of everything backwards, right? The water flows downhill, doesn't flow uphill. So when I have an inspiration, the water must flow from that inspiration into an idea to organize myself to do something and then move into action. Right? If there's something inside that I have to do or want to do, I need to start organizing it and put it into action. Even if it's a half step, I need to do that. And then let all the concerns and fears and worries, let me deal with them while I'm on that path. If I'm putting all that in front, all the fears and all that kind of stuff in front of my goals, in front of my direction, in front of those steps that I need to take, then I am not working with it as the need is. So here's the final component of it. Those fears I have to deal with, or other people's fears, those limitations that I have are other people's limitations. All of them cannot be healed while I'm doing nothing. There is no solution to them. They just keep going around and around in a black hole over and over again. And yet, the calling is to heal those fears. The calling is to move beyond limitations. The calling is to move into wisdom. That is the calling for all those things. That is what separates out greatness from being petty and little. So until I see it and realize that all those things are going to be there until I start moving forward.
What if you didn't have to navigate uncertain times alone? What if you had a steady place to land, a place where your intuition is strengthened, not dismissed, where your spiritual questions are welcomed, and where growth feels grounded instead of overwhelming? Welcome to Reawaken. Reawaken is a monthly membership for people who know there's more awareness, more clarity, more connection, and who are ready to access it in a practical way. Inside, you'll receive monthly life regroupings to realign and refocus, ongoing tools to strengthen discernment, intuition, and emotional awareness. This isn't about escaping the world. It's about becoming steady within it. It's about learning to trust your inner compass. It's about moving from reaction to awareness, and it's about remembering who you are and walking forward with clarity. If you're ready to feel supported, aligned, and spiritually grounded, Reawaken is here. Join us and reawaken the part of you that already knows.
Am I going to encounter troubles? Yes, I'm going to encounter troubles because I'm making the grade, right? I can't grow here without some pain, right? They call it growing pains, right? That is part of the price I pay for being here. However, suffering is just going back and sitting in all of the worries and all of the fears and trying to organize and then reorganize and analyze and redissect and reorganize. And all that is suffering. That is suffering. That's not pain. That's suffering. So anyway, the bottom line is, if I'm committed to myself, that is not greed. It becomes greedy if I'm committed to myself at the expense of everyone else. That's when the greed kicks in.
So in summary, for me, what strikes me as you're sharing, and it just keeps coming back to me, that I'm a soul with a purpose and a plan.
Right.
So part of my plan is to be involved in my interests, like what's got my desires. Interesting, Teresa interviewed Meg Calvin, who recently wrote a book, There He Holds Her, and it's on our YouTube channel and, of course, in our podcasts last week, and we released it. And she said, desire is God's way of touching your heart. And I thought that's a beautiful way to express it, that it comes through our heart, that desire. So now we're going to get into interests in a little bit.
Yep.
And one of the things that, we wanted to do here with Spiritual Perspective Discerning News was kind of related to, not kind of, but related to the outer environment and the stories. So again, kind of referring to the tide that's, moving through. And I guess I'll ask, what are some of the stories in the news that you would like to share about that struck you this week?
Well, I mean, again, we're in the month of leadership, and that's going to become heightened in everything around. Now, events happen, but the facts is a lot of the solutions are there spiritually to move forward. So, like, to me, an example for what we're talking about, and going into interest as an example, or control, or rather than being in charge of my energy rather than trying to control everything. Like, because of the latest things with all the Iran thing and how that's affecting people, and then you have the different countries volleying for different types of control. It's starting to show where there's dependencies. And so that when something breaks down, if there's a dependency, then I break down because I'm now connected to something outside of me. Now, obviously, we need some degree of give and take, right? I don't have time to go make the sidewalks. I don't have time to go hunt the food and do these things that we're doing. So, there's different people doing different things, and that's good. We're trading and having all that great stuff. But if I don't have myself organized and I don't have that sense of where I begin and end, then what happens is the environment can put pressure on what I need to be doing. And I'll start paying a high price. And this is the key, right? This is the words. Mm-hmm. I pay a high price for something that I already have. So what I'm seeing in the environment is that lack of inner and lack of outer leadership for what my purpose is, for what I need to be involved in, because I cannot. And if anything has been reinforced now, I cannot control many things in the environment. People have free will, the sons of guns, they got free will, the stinkers. But I'm joking with that. I want my free will so everybody can have theirs, right? But I cannot control everything out there. So spiritually, I need to know where I begin and end. I need to have that sense of crystal clear direction and be able to make sure that my lines of communication are clear. My ability to exchange with other people are clear, so that if anything happens with any one person or groups out there, I still can go do my work. I still can get my needs met. Otherwise, I now have unconsciously or consciously intertwined my destiny, my needs with other people who may or may not have the same interest as me.
So what was the story that struck you that got you to kind of reflect upon that?
Well, there in Europe, in particular, because of the Iran thing, they're now having to scramble when it comes to oil and try to figure out how to handle the shocks and the moves, right? Because there's subsidies there. So it's become a big deal because it affects a lot of people. And the way they've structured things is a little bit tenuous. So if there's any disruption, everything starts to wobble. So to me, that's that example of how if I've got things wound too tight and I don't have that sense of simplicity, and I think you were sharing a lot about the difference between simple and complicated, how much that can affect things. And then now all of a sudden everything becomes a big deal. And oh my gosh, let's get all these, the big politicians make a big stink. And we're going to spend more money. And now everybody's more and more inconvenienced. I mean, it just becomes a bigger and bigger cascading effect. So that's an example of where if I don't have the clarity of what I need and what I want, that is to say, I have the leadership about that, I'm going to be all twisted when one little thing happens.
And one thing that occurs to me is that sometimes there's going to be conflict or confrontation as I'm setting my boundaries to keep things simple. And there will be a lot of folks who will want to, complicate things for me to manipulate me or to control me. But as long as, and that's never going to end. That's one thing that I reflect upon now is that as I get older, if it wasn't in a way, Iran and the continuation of bombing as of today by the Trump administration or by, the U.S. government to, force them into a deal is the latest news as we're recording this. However, throughout my life, there's always been something like Rosanna Dana's mother used to always say, there's always something. And it's so true. I mean, so I really have to come back to what's going on with me spiritually. Now, I'm still involved in the outer world, so I need to balance that. But if I don't know what my personal interests are or what my higher interest is, I can end up in a lot of confusion, worrying about things, going through suffering, not trusting my inner authority and not trusting that. And this can happen in a small level within a family or at work. If I don't establish my boundaries in a clear way, if I'm not sure what my higher goal is, or, my higher perspective is, I'm just going to be blown by the winds around. And my guidance gave me a little insight. I don't know if I mentioned this already, but we were talking before we got on the air that, if it's better that I ask for how to respond to things or how to work with the energy that I'm faced with, or that's in my environment, rather than always asking for them to create new outcomes for me or pray to God that some outcome will happen, in the outer, rather than, I'm not saying don't do that, pray for peace or put that beautiful energy out there, those intentions out there, we can build up the energy and, put it in a storage bank of spiritual energy, so to speak, so that healing energy is available for people as they get uplifted. But anyways, that's what's been on my mind, because I want to talk about some of what's going on in the environment. I often can see what's happening to folks. I can see how the environment's reacting based on their spiritual concepts. And one of the things that strikes me is, as we do move forward, I'm more aware of the leaders who like to keep it simple and stick by their guns rather than try to throw all these complexities in. And that happens to me, and I'm sure that it's happened to some of our listeners, that I felt a desire to do something and want to follow through. And then I get all kinds of external advice through my environment, or even just within my own self, within my head, the excuses start to show up. So for me, being a spiritual leader is really focusing on that first. So it's like, wait a minute, all I want to do is be successful at this. Here's how I'm going to go about that. Okay, this way didn't work. What do I feel my next step is? Who do I need to communicate to? How can I communicate better? How can I show up more on time? These little things in life. But it does strike me that, this isn't like a la-la land or airy-fairy, like kumbaya world. I mean, even when we can be mostly like that, but boy, there's, even in spiritual work, we butt heads once in a while as we're learning how to achieve what our interests are. And a lot of times that bumping of heads is because I've forgotten what my higher purpose is, my sense of being happy and free and truly of service. Why do I want to feel happy and free? Well, the freedom comes through being of service. It's not, the more I love myself, the more I have love to share with everybody else. So as I walk through my everyday life, my guidance can sometimes help me be aware of, like, oh, I'm trying to control something right here. And what's that really based on? It's a little fear. It's a little fear that I won't ever get what I want, or I'm going to lose something, or, how true is that? Is that even true? Is that even factual?
Yeah. There's an old saying, maybe you've heard me say this before: know one thing, know 10,000 things. And it's a great little saying, because until I start mastering myself, I'm always going to be at odds with everything out there. And this latest stuff that's happening in the news and everything else that's going to crop up between now and the next podcast, it's all going to keep happening one way or another, because people have free will. It's the world, and people are going through their learnings and growings. Mm-hmm. That's the way it is. And imagine if someone came along and tried to prevent you or me or any of the people listening from growing. Well, we would rebel against that, mm-hmm. So trying to prevent people from having their life and having all the great and terrible things that happen on planet Earth, it's a waste of time. It truly is a waste of time. It's not that the bad things aren't bad. It's just that people are going to go through their thing at their level of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wasting my precious time if I'm getting involved in trying to control all these things, right? It's just it's a level of awareness that's based on fear, like you started the conversation with.
Mm-hmm.
But coming back, no one thing, no 10,000 things. So if I start to focus in my own life, become more masterful with something simple, that blooms into when I go to work. It blooms when I start having interactions with people. Because I have things simple inside me and I cannot be moved by it, then all of a sudden I may be posed with a challenge. I may be posed with a problem. I'll find a solution because I have more mastery inside. I don't need to know everything. I don't need to be perfect. But if I start to be able to have clear of who I am, where I begin and end, that type of leadership will expand. I'll be able to move through the world without disturbing a bunch of things that need to be stayed in place. And then my last point about what you're saying is there will always be people and situations that want to keep me from moving forward. Always. And usually it's not a malicious thing. Sometimes it is, but it's rarer. It's more about people's interest. In other words, when I move up, it can stimulate other people because they're not moving up,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or if I'm starting to be successful, all of a sudden I'm a bad guy because now, the rich against the poor and all this kind of stuff starts coming up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the funny thing, just a little side note. This is the funny thing about people who complain about money and the rich. We all want to be rich. We all want to enjoy more with more money. Yet when someone starts achieving more, we're going to put them down, right? They call that fear of success, right? They want to have a little bit of success, but not so much that they step out, right? To get all the criticism. So it's a game. It's a game. So anyway, coming back full circle, to me, that energy of what really is my interest, what am I here for, that is sacred. And that's what keeps me moving.
Yeah. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that spiritual matters are simple and practical. Complexities and theories eventually lead to limbo. That's kind of sitting on the fence, neither here nor there, and confusion by clinging to limited ideas or physical things. There's nothing wrong with ideas or things, of course. They are important and useful so long as I do not become possessed by them. On the other hand, when I recognize that my opportunities, relations, and situations are a means to an end, everything becomes clear. I know where it all fits. Working with spiritual energy is a practical way of life rather than worship or ideology. Here are the facts. God helps those who help themselves. When I recognize that God is a tremendous power within me, I take charge of my life. I like that. When I recognize that God is a tremendous power within me, I take charge of my life. And
well, that goes back to the question, the person who's asking questions there on the thing.
Yes.
Is that I have to respect, I have to have enough self-respect, enough loyalty to self to recognize that reality, that God is not some big man with a stick outside. God is a tremendous power inside. And if I'm not working with it, I'm not feeling and thinking about it that way, then I'm always going to be at odds.
Yeah. And
I mean, that's the other reason why you and I talk about the subscriptions and stuff. Like, this is the Weisho, you're reading from the Weisho's philosophy, and that's just one little piece.
Yeah, these are just a couple pieces in the subscription.
And so if I can just take some of that and bring it into my life, how powerful would that be? I mean, they're just words on a paper, but how am I going to activate that? And like, here's a personal story as an example based on all that practical that you just read. Like, I had a situation for a couple days this week where it just like the Murphy's Law was kicking in, that anything that can go wrong will go wrong kind of thing. And it was like every single move. It was very frustrating, right? I kept going, but it was very frustrating. And it took me a little bit to break out of the feelings I was in. It took me a little bit, and thank goodness I have these things to regroup around that we talk about, you know, the regrouping myself around the themes, regrouping myself around those meditations, regrouping myself around those subscriptions and home studies. Like, I got to come back to that, and then I take, you know, it breaks me out of that energy. But until that point, oh my gosh, it would do everything I could do to just keep my energy up and keep a semi-positive attitude through this every single, like, I go here and then something would break. And then I go here, I was fixing something, right? And it lasted, something that was meant to go for an hour, literally took all day and into the night. I went to sleep at midnight that night.
Okay.
Right. And it was just ridiculous. Something that was 1 hour, and it just, I'm overstating a little bit, probably 2 hours, but meant to be 2 hours. It took all day. And so this is, if I don't come back to that reality that, wait a minute, this all needs to be practical. This all needs to be simple. How can let me take a break. Let me go back and relax, right? But it's easy to get caught up in stuff when I'm, you know, dead in the middle of it. I feel like I'm up to my neck in alligators in the swamp, right? Yeah. And wait a minute. I'm the one in charge of my energy, right? I can take a break. I can keep hitting it. I don't have to do it. I can do this. I can have it. That's the energy of that God within, right? Otherwise, the circumstances are now dictating to me how I'm supposed to feel. And that was what happening to me, where I started feeling frustrated because I started allowing the circumstances to penetrate me rather than me, of who I am, what I come to do, penetrate the circumstances.
Yeah, and so my higher interests, you know, are my spiritual thrust is to be happy and free. And so I found myself in situations like that in the past where, say, a deadline or a goal or a physical objective, you know, I need to hit. And so, you know, if I become aware as I move through the month with these subscriptions, as I regroup spiritually, I go, wait a minute, this doesn't feel simple. This feels like complex. How did that happen? Well, what was that fear that I first felt, or what was that pressure that I accepted? And a lot of times those fears and those pressures are have a lot of prestige in our society. You know, they're concepts, they're religious concepts, they're just neighborhood concepts, they're, you know, your country's concepts of how things are supposed to be. You know, we're supposed to,
it's noble to suffer.
It's noble to suffer, you know, and all that. Well, really, you know, I found that if I just listen to my guidance, or just say, oh my God, I'm feeling like I'm a little too in control. I've got stimulated by competition. No, I've got to make it, you know, and that kind of thing, where it's impractical. You know, if I'm there actually trying to run a race, or I'm playing a hockey game, or I'm playing basketball, enjoy the competition, you know, but keep it simple. Keep it simple. It's simple. I'm here to win and do the best I can do and perform the best I can do today and be of service with that, you know, performance kind of a thing, and not get caught in the concepts about whether it's right or wrong or good or bad. I'm just being me. I'm being happy and free as my thrust throughout that experience. So one of the things I wanted to mention was that in our programs that we offer through the Wayshowers College and our subscriptions, we provide people the tools and techniques. You know, we provide a home study so they can get, you know, the philosophy for that month that we know that Spirit's working with, and, you know, little things here I'll have a bad day and I'll go read one of these paragraphs and I go, oh, well, that's kind of what I experienced, or I forgot that, or, and then I take a moment to reflect with my guidance. And then the next time I go through it, as it comes up, I'm kind of more aware of that now, that I have a tendency to get caught in the prestige of the deadline, or, whatever that normal thing that we've all been trained to do in some ways. So anyway, Planet Earth is just a school, and I'm here to learn and grow. And I find that we don't give people their answers. We help them uncover. Nobody's ever given me what my answer is in the programs I've been involved with, because I would rebel against that as well. But they've shown me ways that I can uplift and find out and tune into the wisdom I already have in the areas that I need to work on, which kind of brings me to the last little point of discussion, in that over this week, I noticed that certain podcasts and interviews I was attracted to. And one of them was, I was watching a lot about Donnie Brasco, Joe Pistone, who was in the FBI, was undercover in the mob.
Informants.
Yeah.
From the FBI, yeah.
Yeah, well, he was an undercover agent.
Undercover agent against the mob.
Yeah, against the mob. And, it's the Johnny Depp played him in the movie Donnie Brasco. Right. And I was around at that time, and I would hear snippets, but, they kept it pretty quiet, and I didn't fully grasp what was happening. So I find it interesting. Oh, that was what was going on, because he now can tell the whole story and how it happened for him. And one of the things he said, which I thought was interesting. Now, this is a great example of why am I attracted to listen to this? Why have I listened to a couple of his interviews, And because there's a little tidbit there for me, is what I found. Like, why am I interested in that book?
Going.
Why am I interested in that movie?
Subscribe, or comment below. We would love to hear from you.
What's the message there for me? So the message was that he was describing how he had learned as a young person growing up in New Jersey. He was around mob guys, and his parents said, don't have anything to do with them. And he learned that, like, when he approached them in a dance hall or something, and they were talking about, he knew who they were, but they were talking about something he didn't know anything about. He said, you walk away, that's none of your business. And so here's an interesting story of, we get intrigued by, the mob and the brotherhood of the mob. And of course it's all bullshit, but that's, what really attracts people spiritually. There's a spiritual attraction, that's going on there. And it struck me because over the last week or so, in some business opportunities I've noticed that I'm aware of a lot. I'm sensitive, I'm a smart guy, I've got a lot of life experience, but some of it is none of my business. That all I'm there to do is to do this one thing or have this transaction, and I don't have to save that person from their, all I have to do is be a positive, loving, you might say, person, by just being of service and being clear and treating everyone with respect and patience. Those are the ways that, and I have to, as I feel that, it's amazing how the transactions go easier. But I like to share this example because it's one little example of habits I had of not minding my own business, and how all I had to hear was that little click, that little phrase from him, somebody I respected and, of course, I'm intrigued with from my background and so forth. So that's what some of our materials will do for people too, is it like it turns on the little light. Oh, aha. Because we all do it differently. We all have mastery in certain areas, and we all have areas we've come to learn and grow. So it becomes real for me when I discover it from that, that spiritual part. How do you relate to that? Or don't you?
No, I do. So I keep coming back to the theme of the month with that leadership, because I am in the business of me. Mm. Everyone is in the business of themselves. That's the business. That's the number one business that they're here for. The number one business that I'm here for is the business of me. And it takes a deeper meaning. I mean, we heard that term, for how long it's been around, forever. Mind your own business, right?
Uh-huh.
Well, it takes another turn. It goes deeper when I recognize I'm in the business of me, and that I need to mind my business. Right. So it doesn't mean that I can't be of service, I can't help, I can't love, I can't, all that stuff. Of course, I'm going to do all that. But it needs to be in line with making sure that I'm fulfilling on my purpose, which is what these subscriptions are all about. It helps me, educates me, trains me so that I can stay on task. I can take complicated things that society likes to indulge in and make it simple.
There's a stronger current moving right now, and it may be revealing more than you expected. Firehorse energy brings courage and momentum and reveals where clarity is needed. The Reawaken membership is your monthly pause, a place to ground, reflect, and allow your inner guidance to reveal your next step. When everything speeds up, we slow down. So what is revealed becomes wisdom. If you're feeling the shift, we're here. Reawaken with us.
Yeah.
Because I know where I fit in it. I know where I begin in it. The biggest problem with society is, for most people, is they don't know where it fits for them. They don't know how to play the game of life because they don't know where it fits. They've got all their businesses intertwined and intertangled. It's like you don't get it. You're trying to rebel and fight against something that's for you. So if I'm not working with the system in a way that's supportive, I'm working against my own interest. It's in my interest to play the game of life. It's in my interest to learn how to maneuver and do business, or to help young people, or to whatever it is. It's in my interest, especially if I know why I'm here. Especially if I know why I'm here. So going back to that point, interest is so essential. I need to know what I'm interested in. And the question to the that came in earlier, it all begins with that sense of what's in my heart. What's the desire there? Because once I start tuning into that, I need to start allowing myself to move toward it, even if it's a tiny step, half a step, a quarter step a day. But pretty soon, if I just stay relaxed, all of a sudden those quarter steps turn into half steps. And those half steps turn into full steps. And those full steps start turning into a nice, gentle pace, and so on and so forth. So that energy of what we're working with and going beyond it, that is required. For anybody who's listening to this, for myself, for you, it's required that I grow. That's part of why I'm here. As a matter of fact, when I don't feel myself growing, I'm going to get uncomfortable.
Right.
There's something inside that cries out when I don't feel myself growing and evolving.
So what do you think of that quote? So all or many men live in quiet desperation. What's that a sign to you? For me, it's a sign that I'm caught up in my intellect rather than my true feelings, because I'm moving from what I think I'm supposed to want, and there's pressure there. Or I'm not really tuning into what am I here for. I'm not discerning.
Right.
I'm not taking that feeling of, well, I'm here to be happy and free. So, or that feeling, the feeling of it, I don't even articulate it that, I don't say that out loud in my head much. I just go, oh, I'm here to feel free. I want to feel free. Why am I not feeling free here? Why am I not feeling inspired? And it's because I'm somehow cutting off that initial inspiration. So now if I set a goal with my guidance, help me see how I'm cutting that off. Like for me, in indecision, I notice why am I being so indecisive about something? I've caught myself and I said, wait a minute. What I want to ask my guidance to help me do is how can I make my own decision and feel really secure with it in this situation? Help me really have a clear feeling for that. And in some areas, I'm great at making decisions. I follow my feelings. I'm in the right place at the right time. I have success in some of that, but sometimes I fall back to old habit patterns that I'm not even aware of. They're almost subconscious. Unconsciously, I fall into a fear or something. So that's normal. That's why I'm here. I picked some of those up in my first 7 years because that's part of what I came to learn.
Yeah. I mean, the quiet desperation thing is, number one, it's usually born from a living and dealing with a small picture of life, being caught in the little puddles of the river rather than being in the river, right? I get thrown to the side in these little puddles. So if I forget who I am and why I'm here, and that no one is going to change my state of consciousness but me, in other words, I'm expecting someone to do it for me, I am going to have the quiet desperation. And that's just going to keep going on over time, again and again and again, until I shake myself out of that. That's number one. So the lack of the bigger picture, the lack of knowing who I am and what I've come to do, that is to say, learn and grow and expand and grow and try things and make mistakes and learn from them. If I forget that that's part of why I'm here, I will fall and go down to the lesser of everything and be caught in those little puddles and little things like that. And that's where that desperation is. Number two is, if you find yourself there, if I find myself there, then at those moments, I need to have a little bit of uncompromising energy, a little bit of uncompromising thoughts, meaning that I must move forward no matter what. There's a part of me that has to step up, that leadership inside that has to step up and say, if I do what I've always done, I'm going to get what I've always got. So therefore, it is time to be a little uncompromising and say, no, I need to move forward. And if things are going to change, is what you said about sometimes I set my boundaries and then there's conflict.
Yes.
And I have to be willing to risk that. And sometimes things do fall apart because I've created a dependency, right? Not an independent, a dependency on things around me. So when I go to step out, there will be change. And sometimes it's painful. But I need to have a little bit of uncompromisingness in order to move forward at those times. So if I'm willing to do that, then everything will have a little chop at first, but then I'm settled down. So to me, wrap up, all of this is about being a little bit more assertive with my direction, with where I come, with who I come to work with and where I need to be. That's the feeling that I've been getting from this whole thing. And those tools are magic. I'm telling you, not just because, we're selling or something like that. I'm telling you that it works. It works for me. I know it works for you. It works for a lot of people that get involved with it.
Yeah.
And it's just tremendous because it keeps me at a higher state. It keeps me more positive. It lets me gravitate toward that rather than gravitate towards something else that's a lesser vibration. So to me, that whole thing has to do with coming back home to the big picture and allowing that to flow into my daily opportunities. Sometimes I'll forget about it, what I'm supposed to do. That's okay. I get to float back up and say, oh yeah, that's right. I'll do that differently. But never belittle myself. Never compromise my spiritual integrity. That is to say, start believing that I'm just in the physical, right? And never allow one thing to dominate, like my intellect. That's what you're bringing up.
Yeah.
Right? If my intellect dominates rather than a feel, think, act, if my intellect dominates, I will eventually find my way into a black hole rather than moving out and expanding.
Yeah, and I see it on, we're talking to some younger folks, and and people in the midst of everything. But also I see it at the end of retirement age, where people go, I see them shut down and, okay, great, I can escape those pressures I used to face every day at work.
Right.
Or, now I'm just, and they start to just,
yes,
pull in and
Yes.
pull back. And
it's a shame.
it's a shame, instead of utilizing all that wisdom and experience and continually, with the spirit helping renew their physical bodies,
Yes.
and maintain their vigor and we're all going to age whether we like it or not, but let's slow it down and enjoy life, or at least enjoy life while we're here. So again, it's how can I start taking a perspective of what can I change internally in my thoughts and feelings, to start releasing old habit patterns that don't fit. And, some of us have been working on some of these things for a lifetime. So give yourself a break. You're just practicing. And I think the final thing I'll say is that, as we look outside in the greater environment, there's, many levels of consciousness that are dealing through these challenges here on planet Earth. And some people are moving through. Hopefully our leaders, fingers crossed, have some maturity in terms of spiritual awareness and move through things as smooth as possible. But recognize that there are many levels of consciousness, and sometimes we do have to. You really can't negotiate with a snake out in the jungle or the fire ants or whatever. You've got to set your boundaries.
Yeah.
And there's those basics that so we can all live and let live, and be free to pursue our personal spiritual goals.
Right.
I know the more spiritual I am, the more that I cherish freedom, and that both inner freedom and social freedom and outer freedom, because I have more confidence in myself, and I have more trust, and I get turned on by the prospects of the beautiful things we can create. If we work with spirit, we work together. It's amazing, what can be accomplished. And we've experienced those kinds of things in some of our programs as well.
That's right.
Some of the exercises. So, all right. Well, thank you for letting us share. This has been Spiritual Perspectives, Discerning News. I'm Tom Shantz. That's Tiger Coll. And thank you for joining us. We look forward to sharing with you a bit more, and keep those cards and letters coming, folks, and we'll address those topics as they come up.
To keep the enthusiasm going, please like, subscribe, or comment below. We would love to hear from you.